public, right? The idea of a public voice is something that we now take for granted, we now take as a given, but it's something that comes out of the 18th century. It's part of our process of becoming a democracy.
Philosophy can play a role in helping us to think about discrimination, about violence, about social oppression, things that really matter.
I have found there's a lot of interesting connection between my life as a scientist and educator and what's going on in the public conversation.
Pieces I wrote was about how ideas of racism still impact discussions in Germany today. It did help me connect the historical research that I do with contemporary questions.
I think the point for a lot of Native peoples is not so much to make people aware of historical injustices, but it's a way of having all of us own up to our own shared history.
There is a way for you to take your message, to take your expertise, to take your idea, and to get it out there.
You just block it, you bridge to something else, and you say what you want to say. And so that was the most liberating thing in the world to me.
I'm Lisa Valdez. I'm an associate professor of government and Latin American, Latino, and Caribbean studies at Dartmouth College.
I am an expert in aquatic ecology, biostatistics, and environmental health.
In constitutional law and contemporary political theory.
East Asian international security.
Hate speech and pornography.
Poetry of the 1st century AD.
Psychoanalysis and sexology.
In 19th century American literature.
Cross-cultural analysis of writing.
Indigenous rights.
Theoretical chemistry.
I'm an expert in antibodies and vaccines.
One of the pieces that I wrote was a piece that addressed the horrific attacks in Benghazi when our ambassador was killed. And everyone was talking about this, obviously greatly upset about the tragic loss of life. But the public conversation became about all the things that went wrong in Benghazi. But I became very interested in what went right in Benghazi. Our ambassador, Christopher Stevens, was actually very well versed in the cultures, the histories, and the traditions of the people whom he was engaging with as U.S. ambassador, that he spoke their language, literally and figuratively. And so when he was killed, there was public outcry, not in the streets of Washington with people protesting, but in the streets of Benghazi.
The basic point was that we shouldn't think of a challenge or challenging bans on same-sex marriage by invoking the language of gay rights, that there are a lot of problems invoking that in terms of the Constitution, that we do better to invoke the Establishment Clause and the separation of church and state, that bans on same-sex marriage invoke religious reasons, and those reasons are already constitutionally inadmissible.
The thing that has really been intriguing me, and I think it's particularly relevant to what's happening in politics today, is that the UN Convention on Women's Rights was actually drafted and supported by a Republican administration. So it was the Republicans in the 1970s that really pushed this forward, that really supported the idea of women's rights as a global human right. And now it's Republicans who are vehemently opposed to ratification of this treaty. So that's part of the piece that I wanted to be out there in the public arena, that Republicans have a past, they have a legacy of commitment to women's rights that I would like to see them pick up again.
We're arguing against machine grading when really what we should be arguing against is the kinds of things in our educational system that make machine grading necessary. So the way we teach, the way we think about grading, the way we think about responding to student writing in general.
The kind of literature that we read in classics is very rich. They had real discussions about how we were to understand how the natural world responds to the human world. It's useful for us not to be reinventing the wheel, but to go back and see that these are questions that we've posed for some time.
Male violence against women is more like a hate crime than like a crime of lust or passion. And that goes against centuries of enculturation about this. It's political crime. It's not just personal. It's not just private. And that's why I speak out about it. I want people to know that this isn't something that just happened to me. This is a global problem. And my view is it's not biologically determined. It's not part of life. It's not inevitable. We can do something about it.
The thing that really is so amazing about this whole fellows program that we've done here at Dartmouth is the getting to know faculty across the campus. These are my friends now. These are people who, when I read the newspaper, I think, oh, that's an op-ed that Colleen should write, or oh, Jane should write that op-ed, or this is a perfect news hook for Lisa. So this is my crew now, and it's so important just in terms of supporting each other.
I think of the op-ed project in general, and I think of the fellows here at Dartmouth. I think about it as nothing less than a plan to radically change the planet around you.
We believe that the best ideas, regardless of where they come from, should have a chance to be heard and to shape society and to change the world.
I think it's important for our voices to be heard because otherwise the conversations will happen without us.
That's not just men and women or scientists and social scientists and humanists, it's every perspective and every viewpoint.
To take that kind of teaching to another level is a real privilege. To some extent, it's an obligation.
So to have institutional support for this kind of work is really important to me. It really has given me permission to devote time to this, and I've had a blast. It's just really fun.